All right, so we're gonna call the diffuse done. Although it could probably use more, but I'm just trying to push through here. So the next thing we're gonna do is add another layer, and this time we are going to do a specular layer, and we'll just call it shininess, because that's what a specular layer does. I'm going to give it a second because it gets upset when we tell it to do things. Give it a second. Give me a break. Okay. There we go. Okay, so what specular does more or less is this. So I'm going to have the layer selected, and you should be able to tell. So we'll just keep an eye on the shiny area. If I paint white, make sure we're on this. Sorry. If I paint white, shoink, it makes it shiny, right? If I paint black, it makes it matte. And if we paint gray, it goes in between. And if we paint red, this is going to be neat, it shines a red color. Pretty cool. Okay, so basically the specular color determines the shininess of it. But it's based on value, although color can have a factor in it. The value, meaning the lightness to darkness, is the thing that determines the actual shininess. The color is merely the color that is reflected. Okay. So anyways, we have this specular. What I want to do is not this. So what I would suggest is doing this. This is, to me, the easiest way of going about it. Think about what you want to do for your guy. So generally speaking, so if it's clothing, like straight up just like t-shirt, you want to paint black, right? If it's, if your dude is nude or something, then you probably darker gray because your skin has some shininess to it. And so on and so forth. He actually he's got like these tights kind of on, and they actually have a little bit of shininess. So I'm going to say it's going to be mid-gray like this, and I'm going to hit, with my mid-gray, I'm going to go ahead and hit flood paint layer. And you're going to see it's, oh, maybe it is going to take a second. It's flooding. Don't tell Moses. Okay. And that, you're not going to see much difference because that's pretty close to what the original color was. But now what I can do is make some areas more matte and some areas more shiny. I'm thinking his skin would actually be more matte. Now, here's the thing. I could just go through and we could just paint it right on here as you're seeing, but it's kind of hard to tell where I've been and where I haven't. So like, let's say I want to take his skin, and I'm just going to go ahead and make it a darker, almost black color. Well, it's kind of hard. I mean, I can kind of see it, but it's kind of hard at the same time to see where it is. So to do this, a neat little trick, and you can do this actually for any layer, right click over top of it, and you can click on Solo as Diffuse. And what that's going to do is it's going to show you the actual colors that you're painting as color, and not just the shininess that is the result of what you're painting. So what we're going to get is a black, like a really dark looking figure in a second. And we will see just our layer as a color layer on our shininess, because that's inevitably what we're doing is we're painting, pixels. It's just it's being represented as the shininess. There you go. So now you can see, voila. So this is what he's looking like by default. And now what we can do is paint what we want. So I'm just going to go ahead and go like this. And this might be one of those things where, like, remember earlier I was showing you that you can paint, we can do the flatten thing. So you could try painting flattening, but I'm just going to go around and go like this for his arms, right? Because his arms should be a flat color. All right, I'm not going to try to do a super good job, but, right, because that's more or less a solid, this kind of solid color where it's not so shiny, right? I just don't want it to look too terrible so that you can see it working, right? And then obviously his skin here, right, would also be like that. Okay, and then, God, it looks like he just ate somebody, like it's blood or something. Now, maybe this black part would be shinier than the part here, so I could do like a lighter thing here for this part and paint like light onto, I'm using a really big brush. Obviously, you would want to be a lot more precise with it, but I'm just trying to show you how this would work. Okay. Like so. This looks great. Okay. Woo! Perfect, right? Not very clean lines. But now you would see the shininess there. Now, another thing that might happen, let me eye drop this color so that I can get this back. And let's go ahead, and I'm just going to paint this a little bit better. Okay. All right. So another thing will happen, though, is that, you know, depending on what you're creating, some areas are going to be more or less shiny, even within that. So these, I would do whole areas like we're doing for the entire guy. Then I would go through and specifically make it, then put detail inside of it. Now, I can either put it in the same layer, or I can make a new layer and like just call this like primary shine or base shininess and then detail shininess. I'm just going to do it all in one because I don't really care. But if you want to, you could do that. So I'm going to go like this for my color, and then I'm just going to go ahead and use the airbrush this time. And I'm going to go a little bit smaller, and I don't want him to have shiny, shiny lips because that's, you know. But if your character is, let's say, supposed to be wearing lipstick, you could add, you know, quite a bit more shine there, right? So let's just go ahead and put a little bit more shininess on there, a little bit more on his nose, right there. Maybe on this it would be a little bit shinier in some parts, and then we could actually, on some parts, you know, maybe on the inside here, like in the crevices and stuff, I could paint it darker. Is this working? Doesn't look like it's... Feels like it's not painting. It's weird. Why is it... Is it just... Oh no, it is working. Okay, it's just very, very weak. Okay. There we go. So I could paint kind of in the crevices, like in the crevices it'd probably be a little less shiny kind of a thing, you know. Maybe underneath his chin or something, it's not so shiny. So maybe even try to use the dry brush. Put underneath here, not so shiny, kind of a thing, right? So you would put some variation in between. God, it looks like some sort of, I don't even know, really awful thing. And then right here, you know, on this part, definitely would be a lot shinier, like on his elbows, right? So, oops, that's too much shininess. Take that strength down. Come on. On his elbows, maybe a little bit here, maybe a little bit more there. But I would add some variation in it, where it would be shinier, and then, you know, less where it would be less shiny. You know, and you would see that a lot on the figure as well, too. So, like the dry brush here might make sense. So we could do something like this. And then, you know, put like we'll just use white because it's just easier. And then if I put dry brush here, it'll be shinier where it's hitting on the surface, because maybe that'll be shinier than where it's not on the surface. So dry brush might make sense. But I would add variation like so. All right. And you get kind of the idea. Maybe be a little more shiny on the top of his head here, and top of his noggin, right? Doesn't seem to be doing much, but okay. And then when you're done, you would just right click and unsolo. There it is. And then it's going to bring it back. It's going to bring our colors back and all that other business. And we're going to see the shininess that we made. Okay. You might have to go back and forth in order to make that, you know, make sense or whatever. But it should work regardless, right? So you can see, obviously, some of him's a little bit shinier than others. If we look at, you know, his lips are so shiny. They didn't do a good job, but you get kind of the idea, right? So you can add and make some things shinier and other things that are shiny. Like, for one thing I could have done, and I might actually do this on my final one, is that, you know, maybe make this shine like this, but maybe keep this black, but put the specular color on my stripes here as blue, so that when it shines on the stripes, it actually shines like a blue color. That'd be kind of cool, right? You could do all sorts of cool things like that. So I'm not going to right now, but that's the kind of thing you could do. Do really neat, you know, maybe the shine on this is more of a goldish color. I don't know. You can figure it out. But so we'll call that good on the specular. And then the last thing I actually need to do is this. There's other ones available too. You can look at this. It's like reflectivity and transparency and other things that you might need. But what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and this should work on yours, I think. We're going to bake our high res model. right now, if you were to look at our model, if I look at my object list and I go to my polys here, you're going to see that it's like, it's a lot of polys. I don't even know what number that is. Let me see. 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3. So 50 million polys. Is that right? Something like that. It's a lot of polys. Okay. It's like too many polys. So this isn't usable like as is. What I can do is use the lower res version. So if I hit page down, and then it's going to go down. I'm just going to hit page down all the way until I get to the bottom level, and I will actually pause this, and then when I get to the lowest level, now what you can see is some of those details are there, but it's definitely not what it was, right? Like this, it's kind of disappointing. We had that really cool model, and now he looks like this. This would be appropriate for a video game. It's pretty low poly, but unfortunately, it's also kind of crummy. But what we can do is we can bake those high-res details of our sculpt as a texture map, as a normal map. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. So first off, you'd want to save this. I'm going to save this as some file, save scene as, save it as Mudbox, not V4, V4 normal map. Okay. What we're going to end up doing basically is this. We're going to bake the high-res details as a texture map on the low-res, and it's going to fake the details onto them. I'm sure if you've ever played a video game, if you look at the silhouette of the model, you can actually see the faceting of the model. I mean, you can see that it's low poly, but when you look at it, especially directly on, when you're looking perpendicular at it, it looks like it has more detail than it does. So for instance, like a brick wall, sometimes they'll show as like a cool looking wall, and it looks like it has all these individual bricks like sculpt in it. But if you actually went up and put your head up against it, you will see that it's actually perfectly flat. And that's because what they did is they did what we just did, is that they sculpt these high-res details, and then they bake it as a normal map. And it more or less, it fakes the light and shadow of the light and shading of the surface. So we're going to go to Extract Texture Maps, New Operation. And you can see there's a bunch of options here. One of them is ambient occlusion I was talking about earlier. What we want to do is a normal map. So do normal map, target model, and then we'll just hit... so what I want to do is, because I have his eyeballs and I don't want that to be part of it, I'm going to select the model here, and we're going to hit Add Selected. Okay. There we go. And Source Model, Add Selected. Okay. So you want to make sure you grab it here first and then Add Selected. So what this is going to do is it's going to compare the low resolution model to our high resolution model. We don't really need that. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead. Raycasting's one way of doing it, but it's supposedly supposed to be better. I think you have more control over it, but I've been having better luck with subdivision. So I'm going to choose subdivision instead. If you do the raycasting, let me see, best guess. Yeah, I don't even know why it's giving me this, but usually I don't have that. But I'm going to use subdivision because I don't think it requires a lot. It doesn't require anything from the video card, I guess is the way to put it. So we're going to generate one map for all targets. That's fine. Image size. I would want to do, so I'm going to eventually make wow, you go higher. Eventually I'm going to do 4096. So if you've been painting 4096, do 4096. I'm just going to do 2048 because I'm trying to keep it lower res so that it runs okay. But just, be aware. Anti-Aliasing, so that is the jaggedy edges. Just do like 2x. You can go higher, but what you're going to find is that just going up a little bit more, it increases a lot more render time. Okay. Compatibility, want Maya Soft Image, which is tangent. And then it's going to be a texture, and then it's going to ask where you want to save it. So hit that little ... and then you want to navigate to where you've been saving your model. And we'll just save it in here, and I'm just going to call it normal map, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a normal map. And then we'll hit save, and then you're just going to go ahead and hit extract. And this is one of those things where it could potentially crash. Hopefully it doesn't. But it's just going to take a little bit of time. So if you look it down here, you can see the little things going across. So I'm going to pause it, and when it's done, I'll show you what it looks like. Hopefully you get this message. You hit OK. Let me hit close. And I'm going to go ahead and hold Control and click on this guy, and that will unselect it. And here you go. Now, if you look at it, at first glance, it looks like our model from before. But what's actually happening is that it created a normal map. So what it is that you can actually tell right here. You can always tell by the silhouette. You can see the faceting, like every face. See how it's really sharp right here? And I can see each individual face right on the side here. So if I hit W, you can see the wireframe. What it did is, if I turn it off, it's kind of creepy, right? It's kind of weird. But it fakes our high-res details as a low-res, well, as a texture map. And that's how they do video games, basically. So all the elements and stuff, they make a high-res model, but then they bake the details as these low-res texture maps. Okay? But here you go. Like, look at this is kind of what I was talking about. See this line here? You know what that is? I didn't match my line here to my texture map. That's why I was trying to put those there. Because watch, there's probably one here too, but you're not going to be able to tell so much. See the line? There it is right there. But it's actually on my seam, so it's kind of hidden in a way. But that is our texture map seam. So even if we try to hide it, especially when you auto-generate things, you're going to end up with some of that. So that's one of those things that can kind of happen with the normal maps. You're going to see it there, and then wherever there's like inside the fingers, you often will see little hiccups. Okay, so you see these little lines here. That's where you're going to see them. You're going to see them wherever there are seams on your model, as well as on, let's see the back. See, nothing too bad there. As well as on areas that are close to each other. So what I'm going to do is this. We can kind of help fix some of it. I'm going to right click and do solo as diffuse, kind of like what we did before. And this is what a normal map actually looks like. It's an RGB that's that looks like this. So there's also another thing called a bump map, but that's gray and it does a similar thing. What you can do is where there are issues. So for instance, right here, right? See that line right there? This one I drew, that's from my sculpting, but this other one is from the other thing. What I can do is, I'll just go to regular paintbrush here. I'll make it small. And let's do the fall off as this. I can brush, I can hold shift and try to smooth out that line. And that's what I normally do. I'll go through and wherever there's like, see how like this looks kind of crummy? I'll just smooth that out. No one needs to know. So wherever it gets kind of like torn or not that great, I just hold shift and we'll smooth it. You're going to lose your detail, but you're going to get rid of seams. So if there's a seam that's really bad, like see this one right here? I bet this looks awful on my thing, right? I can just go ahead and hold shift and I'm just going to smooth it out in between. Smooth it out there too. It's going to be kind of hard. And then that will hopefully fix some of it. And then what I'll do is right click unsolo. And you'll see. Oh, I didn't do that. What the heck? How come it's still there? That's weird. That seam must be coming from something else. Let me see something. It's not this one. Is it pre-shading? Well, usually that gets rid of it, but yeah, I'm getting a little bit of something here too. Oh well. Anyway, so that's why we have to hide those seams. We try to put them in places that make sense. Okay. But yeah, so then when you're done, we have a relatively low res model, right, with pretty high res details, and this is totally ready for a video game. So when you're done, just save this. When you go to submit this, you can just submit the Mudbox. But the thing is, I'm going to need your Mudbox file as well as this normal map file. That normal map has to come with it. Otherwise, I can't see the normal map on there. This is actually linked to your model itself. Okay. But yeah, that's basically it. And then just to be done with it, you would just export, or you could send to Maya. If you do send to Maya, it'll send it to Maya and it should look like this, or you can export the model and then you can right click and export the channel merged as like a PNG or a JPEG for each one of these sections. Oops, cancel. That's what you would do. All right. Yeah. So good luck. Hopefully, I'll probably finish this guy because like look at this. This is great. But you hopefully got a good enough idea of how you would do it. All right. So good luck. I'm excited to see what you guys make.